Good. It's an absolute delight to see you guys here with us this evening. Tonight's theme, if you flick through the leaflet, you'll see tonight's theme is around confidence in a complex world. We live in a complex world. At times our world can feel a little bit crazy and a little bit mad. And sometimes that can really affect us. I wonder how you feel, both tonight and actually generally when you come across stuff in life. Sometimes we can maybe feel like this circle here, that life just feels like going round and round and round. We get up, we go to work, we do stuff, we come home, and it sometimes can feel just a little bit pointless, a little bit samey, and a little bit kind of, what is my purpose? Maybe for others of us, we feel a bit like this diagram here. We are the purple spot in the middle, and we kind of feel ourselves being pulled in different directions, or we think we've just about got something sussed, and then we find actually we haven't got it sussed. I constantly find I think I know that the word sick means, for example, that you're poorly, and then I discover that actually sick can actually mean that it's quite cool and quite good if you're in touch with young people. And so sometimes we can just feel, I can't keep up with all the changes that happen in our world. And in fact, in the UK and across the world, in the last few years, it just seems to have gone a little bit bonkers. And we just think we've got something sussed, and we find out we're actually living in a bit of a post-truth world where everything, you can lie and it doesn't mean anything these days. And so we can feel a little bit, what is going on here? Or maybe we feel a bit like this final circle. And here is us, and here is our kind of comfort zone. But actually, it seems there's so much that we don't feel so comfortable with. And we can feel at times lacking in confidence as we face our challenges. And we can often end up feeling like this. We can end up feeling that I'm not talented enough, I'm not good enough. Everybody else seems to have it sussed. If we're on social media, we flick on and it seems that everybody else seems to have this world where they have it sussed. But for us, inside, we feel not smart enough, not clever enough, not pretty enough, not thin enough, whatever it might be. And we feel just not there. Now, that can often leave us feeling somewhat tentative. I had a couple of thoughts around tentative. I once sat down on a white patio chair. You know the patio chairs that you sit on? And I sat down on this white patio chair. It was actually in a room full of people. I think there are some people here that may have even witnessed what I'm just going to... Some of you are nodding and smiling. And of course it was incredibly funny as I sat down on this white patio chair, and the patio chair could not cope with Colin sitting on it and just decided to go ping. And I was there lying with my legs akimbo up in the air. Everyone was quite shocked, of course, and helped me up. Until about 8 people perhaps helped me up. And here, have another white patio chair. You can imagine as I went to sit down, I was somewhat tentative. And actually, if the root that sits in the root of us, our foundation, how we feel, is a bit wobbly, or we've had a bad experience, it can leave us somewhat tentative. If you've ever crossed a bridge that is rickety like this, and you'll kind of go, how much weight do I put on this? Perhaps particularly if you've started and it feels somewhat rickety, you're very tentative and very unsure and can feel lacking in confidence. Now, you may look at me and go, Colin, you're standing here with a mic on talking in front of us, so you must be completely confident. But I have to say there are moments, and you may have heard of this phrase called imposter syndrome. There are moments where I feel that I have imposter syndrome. Now, some of you will know, my dad, when we grew up, he was a farmer. He just worked on a farm. He didn't own a farm. He just drove a tractor. So I'm the son of a farmer. And at times, particularly when I used to be a head teacher, and I used to kind of stand in front of all these kids and they'd be looking at me, I thought, any moment now, somebody is going to go, excuse me, you're the son of a tractor driver. What are you doing in a school doing this sort of thing? And if we base ourselves on something, if at the core of us, we look at our weakest point rather than our strongest point, rather than seeing ourselves as God sees us, it can leave us feeling very tentative and very unsure. Now, you will perhaps have different experiences. Maybe you're sitting there going, Colin, we came tonight because we thought we could teach you about confidence, not because we want to learn or discover what confidence really is, but maybe for some of you also, you have moments like that. Maybe actually you do roles and things that mean you are up front. Maybe for some of you, you don't, but you lead people. You work with people who are part of your team. And at times you can feel, well, where does my confidence come from? Now, I have a picture here. Some of you will recognise this picture. In fact, this picture is taken, my brother and sister-in-law are doing some building work, and they recognise this because this, if you don't, it's not a grave. They're not burying somebody. It's actually the footings for some foundations for some walls. And I bet I could say, I could probably ask Ali now, because I did hear her rattle this off. What do you need to put in there, Ali?
Gen 2 concrete.
There you go. Not just any old concrete, but Gen 2 concrete. And then Julian, who's a builder, is look. Is this right, Julian? Has someone told her the correct? Yeah, close. So, yeah, you might want to liaise afterwards just to check whether it's a Gen 2A or whatever it is. I don't know what concrete's what concrete. But Ali has worked out, and she'll check with Julian later, I'm sure, the right concrete going in the right hole. And it's the same with us, actually. What you pour in your foundation of your thinking, so what we have in our thinking as the foundation of our thinking, makes a difference to the confidence in what we build on. And so I want us to think about what actually then needs to be at the foundation for us in actually helping with confidence. We're going to look at things in terms of what does the Bible tell us, but we'll also work in some useful things from our world as well. But often in our complex world, our self-esteem can feel low because we feel we're pulled from pillar to post. Everyone else seems to have it sussed. Everyone else seems to have the right body shape or the right hair. In my case, unless I have a wig, I don't know whether I've got the right hair or not. But our self-esteem can feel low. Our confidence can therefore then feel low in particular roles that we're doing. And maybe there's this sense of I don't even really know what my purpose is because I just feel I'm going round and round in circles. But maybe we need to look at it differently. Instead of looking at it how the world looks at it, instead of letting the world shape us to have no confidence, maybe let's have the confidence to shape the world. And if we can discover what is it then that can bring us the confidence that can shape the world rather than the world shape us, it can make a huge difference, not just to us, but to those around us. So I want us just to explore. We're going to look at Connect Church over the next kind of 5 or 6 weeks is going to look at 1 Peter. It's a book that was not written by Peter Havers, who's here tonight, but it was written by the Apostle Peter, in other words, the disciple Peter, who spent time with Jesus. And he wrote this to the kind of after Jesus had died and resurrected and gone to heaven. Peter, with many other disciples, was part of making the church kind of grow and happen. And he wrote this letter to a number of Christians it was a complex world for them. You had the Roman authorities that were trying to, in certain periods, were persecuting Christians. They were spread across many countries, and he wrote this letter to be passed out to help people understand how you can be confident in this complex world. To look at things like what is your identity, your relationships, the gospel of Jesus, the message of Jesus, and a sense of community. How can you be confident in these? So the book of 1 Peter looks at that and explores that, and we're just going to do a little whistle-stop tour, but look particularly at 3 key areas that will help us grow in confidence. And these are the 3 key areas. That actually, if we want our self-esteem to rise, we need to know our identity. And we're going to look actually, our identity comes from theology. In terms of what does the Bible tell us our identity is, which is a rock-solid piece of information. As Christians, we believe it's the Word of God. In other words, that God has inspired and breathed into that. It holds far more weight than Facebook. It holds far more weight than Twitter or any other Instagrammy or whatever else you might look at these days. Also, if we want to grow in confidence, we need to grow our thinking. We need to look at what is our psychology, what are we thinking in our heads. And lastly, we need to show our purpose. And that's the sense of missiology. What is it that's our purpose in the world today? So we're going to explore those 3 things tonight. And this particular verse will be the root of this. These 2 verses from 1 Peter chapter 2. If you have a Bible app on your phone, by all means get it out, follow it, because this won't necessarily stay up here all the time. But we're going to explore that and pick it out. You might want to keep referring back to it. Is Colin telling the truth? That sort of thing. You can kind of double check it. So these verses here in 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 9 to 10, says, "But you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Once you were not a people, but now you are the people of God. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy." So these 2 verses in some ways sum up the whole book of 1 Peter, helping us understand about knowing our identity, growing our thinking, and showing our purpose. So in verse 9, it says you're a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation. You're God's special possession. We're going to look at each of these in a bit more detail in a moment. But that is your identity. You, sitting here tonight, are God's special possession. You are God's special possession. We need to grow our thinking. It says, now you're the people of God. You have received mercy. And we'll be looking in detail, what does that actually mean? And to show our purpose. Our purpose is not to go round in circles each day. We might choose to go to work and do things, but our core purpose is to declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. That's our purpose. So let's have a look at these in a bit more detail. If we want to know our identity, we could base ourselves on what the kind of world pumps out to us. And we could have this sense of feeling worthless and can't keep up with the latest trend or even what the latest word means. Or we can choose to see ourselves as a special possession chosen for a purpose. But what does that mean? Well, actually, if you scan through the Bible, here are some verses from the Bible. This is not the complete bit that tells us about who we are. The Bible can act as a mirror, and it will tell us who we are. And it says in the verse we just looked at, you are chosen by God. That sounds pretty special to me. You're his child. You're made in God's own image, in the sense that you can love and you can care. All the kind of core values that we can possess are made in God's image. It says that you are precious to him. It also says you're irreplaceable. You are unique. Whether you're singular or whether you're a twin or a triplet or a quad, you are still unique. It says that you're loved beyond compare. So 1 John 3:16, he loves you that much. So much in Romans 5:7-9 that you're worth dying for. And we remembered that in communion earlier. That the Son of God died on a cross in order to take the punishment that we deserve for the wrongdoing that we do. And it says that because of that you're forgiven in 1 John 1 verse 9, and you're set free, Romans 6 verse 18. One of the challenges for us, though, is that the Bible tells us we're set free, but quite often we don't let ourselves be set free. We keep reminding ourselves of the things that we've done wrong, even when we've asked for God's forgiveness. But the Bible tells us you are set free. But quite often we'll look in the mirror and we'll have a go at ourselves because we keep doing this mistake. But the Bible says you're forgiven and you're set free, and you are set apart in John 15:16 and 19. You're set apart for a purpose, which we'll explore more in a moment. So at the core part of confidence is knowing your identity, which is you are loved, you were died for, you're special, you're chosen. Yes, you might make mistakes, but you're forgiven, and God sets you free, and you're set apart for a purpose. You see, God's theology is that you're made in his image, and you're chosen, and you're precious, and you're loved, and you're died for, and you're forgiven, and you're set free, and you're set apart. And it's that theology that should drive our human psychology, our thinking, that we should just remember and recognize this is what God says about us. So that's our identity. We're chosen, we're special, we're loved to the point of death. But what about growing our thinking? Because it says here that you're now the people of God and you've received mercy. So what does that look like? Well, there are some useful things in our world that can help us grow our thinking and grow our confidence. And I want to just talk you through one or two of these, because maybe for some of you, you think, Colin, if you ask me to do X or Y, I just melt, or I wobble like jelly. I just find these situations so difficult. There are some really practical things that can help. So in terms of our psychology, understand your mind. There's a guy called Steve Peters who wrote a book called Chimp Paradox. And in this book, he talks about our mind. And he instead of using really big words that we have in our parietal, limbic and temporal parts of our brain, he just renames them for us. And he said, you've got like a human part, which is your frontal part of your brain here. That's your logical thinking part. Your limbic part, he said, is like a chimp. That's your emotional part of your brain. And then he says, this part here is your computer part. And he said, that's where any experience you have, you store it in your computer part. And he says, so when you have an experience, whether it's getting up and going to meet people, what will happen is if you've got a previous experience of it, your brain refers to it in your computer part. And it'll say, have you got an experience of this? Do you find this frightening or not? And if you do find it frightening, it'll be telling your chimp, I've been here before. I've stood in front of a room of people and I found it really frightening. And at this point, you don't really have a monkey in your head. He's just using it as an example. He says, your chimp is getting really agitated. And he said, there are two things that help your emotional part calm down. The first is to recognize your emotions and say, yes, I am a bit scared of this. I am finding this frightening. It does feel that way at the moment. And he said the second thing is you can't dismiss the chimp, but try and reassure the chimp. Try and remind it of little bits that you could do, things and experiences you've had in the past that have helped, maybe people that have helped you too. And he said by doing that, you can begin to manage some of the emotional part of your brain and some of your thinking. And so for some people, that might be really helpful. It's something I use in my other job as a coach and as a trainer. And if anybody would like some help with that outside of tonight, I'd be very happy to kind of help you free of charge to help you with that, if that's an area you would like to help develop. But the other thing is, as well as understanding your mind, there's also some physiological things. So did you know that actually with your brain, when you get agitated, you release a kind of hormone called cortisol, and that gets you alert and ready. But too much cortisol can mean you can either freeze like a bunny rabbit before headlights, or you run away because it's very frightening. And that's all part of the body's system to kind of protect you. But sometimes it can inhibit us. But actually there's some physiological things you can do that can help you if you are finding something a bit worrying and it's making you feel lacked in confidence. Now actually the way you sit and stand can make a difference. So this bottom row here where your arms are folded, where maybe you're crouched over, that actually doesn't help you. But the top row here with open body positions, and they reckon the Wonder Woman pose in the middle here with your hands on your hips, your shoulders back, actually can help you with manage your cortisol. So if you're finding you're in a stressful situation, give yourself a bit of space. Do a Wonder Woman pose. You don't need to wear the Wonder Woman outfit, I hasten to add, but that can actually help you just with your body position. If you know you're regularly finding things challenging, starting each morning with a bit of a Wonder Woman pose and some deep breathing might help you just compose yourself ready for the day. But I reiterate, you don't need to wear the outfit of Wonder Woman, but that open body posture can again help you. But also just things like what we eat, having a balanced diet, getting some reasonably good exercise that works for us, hydrating, making sure we're drinking water, making sure we're getting good levels of sleep. All of that helps, because if you think about it, if you haven't slept much, you can get a bit irritable, can't you? And therefore you can get more worried. So actually getting some sleep, eating properly, drinking can help as well. Expanding your comfort zone can be another thing that happens. We talked earlier on, maybe you've got a small comfort zone. But the way you expand your comfort zone is doing tiny little bits, tiny little experiences. Even if it's just a small amount, can just expand how comfortable you feel with something. So all of those things are quite natural things that you can choose to do. But there is more than that when we look at what the Bible tells us. So in 1 Peter 2, there are a range of things that can help you grow your thinking. And the first one is that once you are not a people, but now you're a people. You are God's people. Once you had not received mercy, but now you have received mercy, from 1 Peter 2, verse 10. If you remember that actually you are forgiven and you are loved, that again helps remind you and helps you feel confident. This one here, actually you're not normal. You might look at me and say, Colin, I can see you're not normal, but we're not called to be normal. We're not called to fit in. The Bible talks about us actually being called to be people of God. And that actually, if we find we can't keep up, or we're not quite as slim, or have the right hair colour, or whatever that might be the latest trend, it's okay, because we're not called to do that. We're called to do some of these other things. We're called, for example, to remind ourselves in 1 Peter 3, verse 3 to 4, your beauty should be that of inner self, the unfading beauty of a gentle and quiet spirit, which is of great worth in God's sight. Reminding ourselves that actually, beauty as God sees it, is not what we look on the outside. He loves the fact that I've got a bald head, because it talks in the Bible, he can count all the hairs on our head, so I just make my job slightly easier for him. But our beauty is actually in the character and nature of who we are. And then lastly, 1 Peter 5, verse 5 to 7. There's a fantastic verse here that says, cast all your anxiety on him because he cares for you. And so those words in the Bible, it's saying, God loves you and cares for you. You can trust him with your worries. You can talk to him about it. However small, however big, in prayer, you can just say to God in your head, God, I'm really worried about this. Please, can you help me? And he cares for you, and he will help you, and he will find people to work alongside you to help you with it when you trust him with it. So know your identity, that you are special and you are loved. Grow your thinking. Understand that God is with you and he loves you and he cares for you and he's forgiven you. And it might be some of those other practical tips as well. And lastly, show your purpose. So it says here about showing your purpose is declaring the praises of him who called you out of darkness and into light. But what does that actually mean? You see, we can live like this, where we just feel worthless, going round and round. We can just, do our daily grind and make money. But is that the purpose? Or we can declare the praises of him who called us. But what does that actually mean? Does that mean we go round, we just carry around with us all the time, Matt and Jenny, and they have to, everywhere we go, they have to play a guitar behind us, and we have to declare and sing everywhere we go? That really would be not normal, wouldn't it? Not Matt and Jenny are fantastic, but us going everywhere singing probably really would make people wonder what it's all about. That is not what this is about. There's actually 3 parts to this. And I'm going to start with this centre one here. It actually starts, above all, love each other deeply, because love covers over a multitude of sins. 1 Peter 4, verse 8. That's what declaring God's praises is. It's actually loving people with the same love that Jesus showed you, which means putting yourself out for people and spending time with people, perhaps those who the world sees as unlovely. Jesus loved doing that. He loved spending time with unlovely people. He found all the unlovely people he could. And then the people who thought they were lovely often had a bit of a go at him about it. But it starts by loving people. It also, in 1 Peter 4, verse 10, each of you should use whatever gift you have received to serve others as faithful stewards of God's grace. In 1 Peter 4, verse 10. Using the gifts and talents that you have. You're using it to serve and help others. Now, our gifts and talents can range completely, but whatever you have, using it to help others around you. And that can be as simple as your time, but it might be you've got a specific skill that you can offer to help those around you. And lastly, in words, always be prepared to answer everyone who asks for the reason for the hope that you have. This doesn't talk about singing at people every time you go round. It doesn't talk about bashing people in the face with Christianity. It just says being willing to answer the reason for the hope you have. If you're living out this love and serving others, people are going to ask you, why are you doing this? And you say, well, I'm doing it because you need help. But my driver that sits behind it is actually the relationship that I have with God. I don't get life right all the time. I make mistakes, but I believe God loves me, and he's commanded me to kind of live that out and help others. And that's what declaring the praises of him is. We declare the praises. You see, sung worship is fantastic, and we really appreciate Matt and Jenny helping us on these evenings with sung worship. But actually what God calls for us to do is to worship him in the way that we live our lives, in our love, using our gifts, and being prepared to answer for that. And that's the purpose that can give us hope. Our life then doesn't become mundane and going round and round in circles. Whatever job we choose to do, actually it's this vehicle that sits underneath it. So we've looked tonight the fact that if we know our identity, we can see ourselves as God sees us, as precious and forgiven and set free if we choose to let ourselves be set free. We talk about the fact that if we change and grow our thinking and change our psychology, we can see that actually it's okay. We're not called to fit in, that our beauty sits inside. It's not about the way we look on the outside, and that we can cast our worries and our anxiety on God and talk to him about it. And lastly, if we show our purpose, share our hope in God with the words that we say, but more importantly, loving each other deeply with our deeds and using our gifts to serve others. When we know our identity and grow our thinking and show our purpose. Now there's another verse which we're just going to finish off with here. In Romans, so this is a book written by a guy called Paul, and he wrote it to the church in Rome. And he said, and be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. If we grow in confidence by renewing our mind means knowing our identity, that we're precious. Growing our thinking, that actually beauty and our confidence in who we are is not actually on what we look like on the outside. It's in the qualities that we demonstrate, that inner self-beauty. And that we're not called to fit in. We're called instead to show God's purpose, to share our hope, to love each other, and to serve with our gifts. That's what will bring confidence when we know our identity, grow our thinking, and show our purpose. Know, grow, and show this week. Renew our mind with this thinking rather than the thinking from social media or what we read in the papers or what we have heard from people. So here's an idea. Instead of letting the world shape us to have no confidence, let's have the confidence to shape the world. Just as Matt and Jenny come up to lead us in the next part of singing, let's just spend a moment just to be quiet and to think about that. And to ask yourself the question, have I got my confidence based on a rickety bridge or a dodgy white chair, metaphorically speaking? Have I based who I am on what I look like? Or do I need to change my thinking and my theology? Do I need to see myself as God sees me, as loved and forgiven and set free? Do I need to just kind of grow in my thinking around kind of how I work my faith out? Do I need to show that in a different way? Am I actually showing the praises of God in what I'm saying and in what I'm doing? Let's just spend a moment of quiet, and then in a moment Matt and Jenny will lead us into a few more songs.